Yo, I'm Blaze, and this is Super Mario Brothers. Super Mario Brothers is a game that is so prolific that it really doesn't need an introduction. But I'm gonna give one anyway. However, before I do so, I'd like to direct your attention to the demo that is currently playing. In particular, I'd like you to take note of how poorly the person playing is actually faring right now. It's pretty dang pathetic. Granted, I'm actually not very good at Super Mario Brothers either, but I'll just leave that for you to decide as you watch these videos. Super Mario Brothers is arguably the most influential and important video game ever put out. Granted, I mean, that's a really difficult, topic to really argue anyway, but Super Mario Brothers is definitely a big contender. It's one of the main reasons that Nintendo is the juggernaut that it is today. It revolutionized video games as a whole when it released in 1985, or 87 if you're in the PAL regions. It is one of the many reasons, but probably the biggest reason that Shigeru Miyamoto is the big video game superstar kind of guy that he is now. There's so many things about it that's just... It's hard to think of video games even existing prior to its creation, because games changed so drastically after it came out. This is at least partially because it was the best-selling video game ever made until the release of Wii Sports for the Wii back in 2006? I don't know, it was a long time ago. Not that long, but then again, it was a decade ago. And I'm willing to bet that there are at least a few people who are going to watch this video who aren't even 10 years old at the time they're watching. So for a lot of people, it's definitely, that's a good chunk of time right there. That's a hot minute. So anyway, you might know, even if you're not too familiar with Super Mario Brothers, you might notice that this isn't really the typical Super Mario Brothers that you might have seen before. A lot of people will probably know this, but this is the Super Mario All-Stars version of the game. This was part of a compilation released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System back in, 93. That includes several other Mario titles. And I wanted to play this version because visually, well, one of the biggest reasons is that visually it's incredibly stunning, especially in comparison to the original NES release. I mean, think about it. At the time, I just totally flubbed that. Wow, that was really bad. Anyway, at the time, HD remixes, HD re-releases, or just improved releases of games in general weren't really a thing. This was one of the first, and it was compiled with a bunch of other classic Mario titles. The SNES wasn't backwards compatible, so it was a really big deal. Think about it. I mean, the game originally looked like this, and now it looks like kablam! Kablamzo! It's a big deal, right? The game just looks stunning. It also sounds stunning as well. What wasn't stunning was how poorly I just flubbed that. Anyway, but yeah, Super Mario All-Stars was a big deal. Now, to be specific, I'm actually running this on a Wii U. On the 20th anniversary special release of Super Mario All-Stars for the Wii, which was just the game put on a Wii disc, with no extra additions whatsoever. It's kind of underwhelming by itself. You get a neat little booklet and a CD with a bunch of Mario tracks on it, and that's pretty cool. But this release in and of itself isn't that impressive. I'm mainly playing this version because it looks best because I can run it through an HDMI and all that. However, it should be noted that Super Mario Brothers, since it sold like gangbusters, Nintendo decided, hey, why don't we just release it on every console we ever put out? That's not entirely accurate, but it's pretty close. Not only are there the NES and SNES versions, of course, but there is also the Game Boy Color Super Mario Deluxe, which was this sort of reworked compilation of Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers The Lost Levels, which is pretty neat. I'll probably do some videos on that at some point because it has some content that isn't available in any other version. I considered Let's Playing that instead of for this version, but I decided that this version was best because not only is the Game Boy Color edition of the game graphically inferior, but it also, because of the Game Boy's tiny screen, everything's, it's sort of awkward to view, because it feels much more cramped. So I figured this would be the best version to play through. In general, graphical fidelity, audio fidelity, it's all just better on this version of the game. Which I'll get into the details of that later. But yeah, it was also released for the Game Boy Advance, which was a straight NES port. They did several NES ports and put them on the Game Boy Advance. That was before the Virtual Console, which of course, that was one of the first Virtual Console games ever put out. Now, I will stop myself to talk about this. This is Bowser, right? So this is the big boss. Normally you'd have to jump over him, but we got here with a Fire Flower, so we can just hit him with fireballs until he dies. Which, that was a Goomba, that's kind of odd. But we completed it. We got to the castle, beat the big boss. And what? Thank you, Mario, but our princess is in another castle. Yeah, this game's not even close to over. Now, granted, I'm sure you knew that. That's really, really obvious. Me feigning surprise was really dumb and everything, but I want to illustrate a point. Before the release of Super Mario Bros., a lot of games, even arcade games, which were generally superior to home console experiences, they were generally one-screen affairs, and even if they weren't very long. Well, Mario Bros. Came along and basically kicked that trend in the head, because not only is it a side-scrolling adventure, but it's an 8-world adventure, each world comprised of 4 levels. That's absurd! Like, it's totally crazy. When you get to Bowser at the end of the castle, and you find out it's not a fake Bowser, but it's just a Goomba, and you go, and it's just, you know, a toad, or a mushroom retainer, as they were called, in the English instruction booklet. It's crazy. It really feels like a whole world. It's not just a video game anymore. I mean, it obviously is, but put that in, like, perspective. Most people fail to realize how significant that really was at the time. The whole, our princess is in another castle thing is just common knowledge and, like, kind of considered a cliche of the series at this point. But it for the time, it was a big deal. And it's still pretty cool, right? Like, kind of just tricking the opponent, not the opponent, that's, okay, what am I talking about? Just tricking the player into thinking that, oh, they accomplished something big, but it's like, no, this is just step 1. That's still pretty cool. A lot of games still will do things where they make you think that, you know, the game's nearly over, but guess what? It's not even close. Like, off the top of my head, I can think of Pikmin 2 does that, Kid Icarus Uprising does that, you know, several titles do it, but it started here. This is the OG when it comes to, you know, Disc 1 final boss, or Disc 1 final dungeon stuff, you know. So, anyway, this is the first water level that we've come across, and it's important to note that, oddly enough, fireballs are an incredible asset in underwater levels. Yeah. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but then again, I don't know why you'd expect sense to come into play in the Mushroom Kingdom. Anyway, I was talking about the frequency of the game's release, and I'll get back to that. There wasn't much more to say. I was just gonna say that, you know, it was on the Wii U Virtual Console, 3DS Virtual Console. They put it on the NES Classic Edition or the NES Mini, depending on what you prefer to call it. And it'll almost certainly be released on the Nintendo Switch's Virtual Console whenever that's gonna come out. I think they said it's coming out in like September of this year. I want to say that's correct. I don't know, but I guess that timestamped this video pretty well. Anyway, so yeah, Super Mario Brothers is just a big deal in general. Like, I mean, everyone knows that, right? It's me saying that probably sounds ridiculous, but I just think it's really interesting when you really put into perspective how significant it actually is, because a lot of stuff happened. It is so influential and so impressive that it's kind of amazing that they put this game out at the time that they did. And it still stands the test of time, even the original version. It's still fun to play to this day. Anyway, though, I think I'll start rambling about, you know, the history of Super Mario Brothers and actually focus on the game itself. This is the first bridge stage, which is populated by flying fish for some reason. I never quite got this. I mean, I guess there's water underneath us, and the Cheep Cheeps are leaping out of it to assault Mario, but, like, I don't know, man. It's just kind of odd. Especially since the Cheep Cheeps' fins kind of look like wings anyway. So, you have to wonder. You also have to wonder, why are there statues of Goombas in the background? Like, what's the deal? Who built those? Certainly not Goombas, right? They don't have hands. How would they build anything? But, I mean, then again, they can wield baseball bats just fine. So, I don't know. It's unclear. Speaking of the whole baseball bat thing, if you don't know what I'm talking about, in a lot of the Mario sports games where Goombas are playable, they are able to wield various sports-related equipment despite their lack of hands and arms, and said object just sort of floats in front of them. I never really got it, nor do I get why I just ate that. That was really pathetic. I never really got that, but I don't know, maybe they have telekinesis. It's unclear. I don't know. I don't have an answer for why that's a thing that Goombas can do, and it never really seems to come into play in the main series, so I don't know. It's confusing. Anyway, though, this level actually isn't confusing. It's very straightforward, and I shouldn't have taken that hit. That was pretty pathetic that I did. Now, you might have noticed as I've been playing, wow, dude, you're playing real slow. Why are you grabbing every coin that you come across? Why are you getting hit? Well, that last bit I wasn't even intending to include in this discussion, but it makes sense for me to do so. Here's the deal. As I stated, I'm not particularly good at Super Mario Brothers, so I play this game in a very cautious, slow, deliberate manner so as not to get nay-nayed on by enemies. See, given that this game is old, despite how great it still is, it does have a live system and you can game over and totally get screwed over. As such, I try to get as many coins as possible and as many lives as possible so that I don't die as quickly and so that I don't have to game over. Now, it is important to note, the Super Mario All-Stars version of the game starts you out with 5 lives, whereas the original NES edition starts you out with 3, so that's kind of nice. But still, I'd prefer to have no live system whatsoever, but you know, it's fine. Speaking of a live system and everything, while I do think it's redundant, wow, I'm just bad. It's important to note that, well, first of all, I meant to mention this. I mean, this is pretty much common knowledge, but if you get 100 coins, you get an extra life. Yeah, so that's part of the reason I'm going for so many coins, but it's also important to acknowledge the fact that, oh, there was something I wanted to say here. Yeah, there's a 1-up right here. That's what I wanted. Anyway, this is the first Mario game that was developed, I think there's something here I want to say. It was the first Mario game that was developed without the need to be sort of cheap in order to get as much money out of people's pockets as possible, because this game was not developed for arcades initially. This was developed as an NES title, and as a result, they didn't have to be super kind of unfair like they were with, you know, Donkey Kong barrels and such. So, you know, that's part of the reason this game is so, you know, bearable even today. I'd hate to be as bad as me at this, but that's not where I was going with that. I'd hate to play a version of this game that was just as hard, but also as unfair as Donkey Kong. That'd be pretty insane. I think there might have been something in this set of blocks, but I don't remember. Anyway. But yeah, this is the home of the classic 1-up trick, but I'm bad and can't do it. I don't know why I went for it anyway, because I don't intend to get infinite 1-ups in this run, blah, blah, blah. I didn't want to mention, if you jump at the top of the flagpole, you get 5,000 points, and that's the max amount of points you can get on flagpoles in this game, and the value descends as you hit lower points on the flagpole. This was, you know, years before they started making it so that flagpoles granting you an extra life at the top, although that would be really nice to have. It's not here. Yeah, about lives, I wanted to say, I really don't like live systems in games. I suppose they're, like, it makes sense for arcade games, right? But, because they're trying to take your money, which isn't ideal, but I mean, it makes sense from a designer's perspective. But in a home console game, it just seems like it's a bizarre way to pad out the experience. And granted, that's sort of justified during the NES era. Like, NES cartridges didn't have a lot of space on them, so if they could make the experience last any longer for the consumer, then that was best, because games were still just as expensive back then as they were today, pretty much. They were still, you know, pretty hefty price, but for way less content. So the workaround was to make it so that, you know, you would have to play it longer, because A, the games would be super hard, and that is part of the reason the games were so hard, and B, you know, if you screw up too many times, you have to restart. So, you know, you just play the game for longer, and you feel like you get your bang for your buck, even though you're just getting screwed over, basically. Now, like I said, back then, that made more sense, but nowadays, it's kind of absurd. Games don't have we don't have these memory limitations with how much space you can put on, like, a disc or whatever. And just generally speaking, there's no issue with content and all that. And games just generally aren't as hard as they used to be. But the fact they're lives, it's just... Here's the deal. If I lose all my lives and I get a game over and I have to restart from some arbitrary point, it seems pointless because I've already proven that I can do this stuff before it. Now, if you start me back at the beginning of the level, I can understand that. Like, kill me, start me at the beginning of the level, because the levels are designed to be completed in one fell swoop. But if you put me at the beginning of a world, which contains multiple levels, it just seems redundant, because, you know, like, I did it already. Why do I have to prove that I can do the same thing again? You're just wasting my time. Doing the same thing over and over again isn't fun. It's just pointless. I mean, it's not a big deal. Games with live systems can still be great, and I'm really making it a bigger deal than even I feel it is. Making it out to be a bigger deal than even I feel it is. But still, it's worth acknowledging that, like, live systems are very much a dated concept, I feel. So, whatever. Anyway, let's just take out this Bowser, blah, 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 Buzzy Beetle. Got him. Speaking of which, we haven't actually seen Buzzy Beetles, have we? So yeah, that's kind of interesting in that enemy appears here before it would normally appear. It's important to note, obviously, the first one was Goomba, the third one was a Buzzy Beetle. The second one would have been a Koopa Troopa if I'd actually killed it with Fire Flower, but I didn't because I got screwed on. And each fake Bowser is actually a different enemy. I've always thought that was pretty interesting. So this is Lakitu. I believe that's how you pronounce it. It is unclear. Yeah, Lakitu is a weird enemy, not because of how he operates per se, but just because of his name. Like, I don't think anyone's quite sure about what it means. It's just like, I don't know. You would figure that'd just be like, that's the Japanese name, and they just left it as is, but that's not the case. The Japanese name is actually Jugemu. Totally different from Lakitu. No one's really sure why they're called Lakitus, but they throw Spinies and they're kind of obnoxious. Speaking of Spinies, you might have noticed that Spinies are unique in this game because they are the only enemy that can't be killed by hitting them from below. I don't know why they are that way, but it just makes them out to be an even bigger hassle than they would otherwise be, but still pretty interesting. Because normally that's a pretty safe way to take out enemies, but not for Spinies. No, Spinies aren't having it. Not one bit. Can I even... I mean, I know I can get back up here, but I guess I can't do it from just a still jump. Actually, it might be better to just do this. Yep, 5,000. Got it. If you're wondering, the points don't actually award you extra lives as far as I'm concerned. So, there also aren't continues in this game. If you get a game over in the All-Stars version, it leads you to a continue screen. If you get a game over in the original version of the game, you just get a game over screen with no options, but you can continue by holding A and pressing start. So you can actually continue in either version. The original game just doesn't make it apparent. So that's a little annoying, but once you know it, you know it, so it's not a big deal. There's no reason to complain about it once you actually have the information in your hands. World 4-2 is really interesting. It's one of the first of all, it's one of the most significant stages in terms of speedrunning the game, but it's also home to the, part of the reason is because it's home to the second big warp zone. I'm not getting into warp zones in this main playthrough. I plan to do a bonus episode after I complete this series, in which I'll talk about warp zones, but not now. Anyway, those are Buzzy Beetles, and Buzzy Beetles are unique in that they are the only enemies that can't be killed by fireballs, making them significantly more dangerous to approach. Other than that, though, they just operate like green Koopa Troopas. And I specify green Koopa Troopas because the red and green Koopa Troopers actually behave differently. See, green Koopa Troopas just walk in a straight line, and they just sort of go straight towards you, and they'll end up going down a pit if the pit is in front of them. Red Koopa Troopas are a bit smarter. Red Koopa Troopas will instead turn around once they reach an edge. I think I can actually just run down and land, but I don't feel like risking it because I don't remember for sure. Anyway, but yeah, Red Koopa Troopas sort of patrol a single area. Once they hit a ledge, they'll turn back around and go the other way. So that's important to note. But yeah, Buzzy Beetles are basically just stronger, or more resilient green Koopa Troopas. So yeah, there you go. Here we go. I will say, wow, okay, well, I don't like that, but I do really like the backgrounds in this version of the game. That's part of the reason I chose to play this over, like, say, Deluxe. And I just ate shit and died. Okay, well. Wow, I just died. That was really bad. I have 8 lives, though. Jeez, so that's good. I just got careless. Yeah, playing and commentating, not the easiest thing to do. Then again, though, it probably just sounds like John's at this point. Like I said, that doesn't change the fact that I'm not particularly good at this game. But don't tell anyone that, because then it'll make fun of me and hurt my feelings. Whatever. Anyway, I've always thought these are really interesting because they're like physics-based things in an NES game, and that inherently is like intriguing to me. So yeah, if you stand on one of these pulleys, the other one goes up, and eventually they'll like break and fall, if I remember correctly. I don't know if that's from later games or if that was introduced in this one, but I don't know. I just think it's really intriguing that they like did something like that here. And now we're done with World 4. Well, we will be once we're done with this next castle. You might have noticed, hey, fireworks went off. That's because fireworks are a little thing that's in this game that you can influence, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I realized I didn't know where I was going with that sentence, so I sort of just, flubbed it, I guess. Anyway, before I talk about fireworks, I want to talk about this. So, this is a maze castle. If you take the right path, you'll get to the end, but if you mess up, it'll send you way back to the beginning. So you have to know the order, and the order on this one's pretty simple. It's just up and down. So we went on the upper path, and now we have to go on the lower path. I can't believe I just ate crap on that one. That was really pathetic. Anyway, here we are. Bowser, I'm coming at you. I know you're not real. You're fake AF, but I guess I'm just dead. Okay, well, that's fine. Anyway, what I was talking about, though, fireworks. So if you complete a stage with a flagpole, which means not a castle stage, and the last digit of your timer is a 1, a 3, or a 6, then fireworks will go off, and the number of fireworks will I'm getting tongue-tied, will correspond to the number in the last digit of the timer. Each firework, I believe, is worth 500 points. So, for example, if you have a 6, then you'll get 3,000 points as a result. Pretty cool stuff. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Podoboos are really obnoxious. That's what the fireballs that jump up are called. They're called Podoboos. And their pattern is kind of, jank, to say the least. They don't really have a pattern. They just sort of, either they jump up, and then they pause and then jump up again, or they jump up immediately after touching the lava. I don't know. It's bizarre. Speaking of the lava, that's another place where the All-Stars edition of the game differs from the original NES version. See, in the original game, lava was just recolored fire. Not fire, sorry, it was recolored water, and you just pass through it. It was basically just aesthetic, for aesthetic purposes. They are just bottomless pits. But in this version, obviously it's its own sprite with its own animation, and you touch it and you actually die. It's not just a bottomless pit, though technically they operate the same. Still, interesting point of difference. Another point of difference that I meant to bring up earlier that I think is really interesting. I totally whiffed that. Anyway, I could have gotten a 1-up if I had chased that effectively and let it hit so many enemies, but I didn't. Anyway, what I was saying, you know how if you're Super Mario, after you've collected a mushroom, you will break blocks that you punch, brick blocks? Well, this version of the game, this Mario All-Stars version of this, and the Mario All-Stars version of this and of Lost Levels is unique in that after you punch through a brick block, you'll still ascend for a little bit. The brick block does not stop your momentum, so you'll still go up, which makes the game feel a bit different from every other Mario title. Whereas in the original versions of those games, if you hit a brick block, it'll basically send you downward. You'll no longer ascend whatsoever, even though you're breaking the block. So I don't know, that's just a minor point of difference, but it's really interesting to me. I don't know why they changed it and why they never brought it back, but still, kind of intriguing. What is also intriguing, in my opinion, is we are about to meet the most annoying enemy in the game, the Hammer Brother. You can see him off to the side there. And this one is in a particularly annoying spot as well, so yeah. See, Hammer Brothers, I can't believe I actually killed him. I thought he was going to throw a hammer as soon as I jumped. I guess I was wrong. See, normally how you'd handle Hammer Brothers is you either hit them from the bottom like that, or you run underneath them when they jump. If you want to, battle them without getting up in their faces. You could just jump on them and get lucky like I did, but that's not surefire since they throw hammers at pretty regular intervals, and it's generally just dangerous to be up in their face as a result. Well, that's not entirely true. The space right in front of them is actually super safe because they throw hammers in an arc. It's sort of like being in the eye of a storm in that regard. But, you know, being a distance from them is bad. It's also important to note, as you saw, they can jump up and down between blocks, but, when they jump down, they can either jump to the next level, or they can jump straight down to the ground level. So, anytime you see one jump down, you should just be safe and make sure that it's not going to land on top of you. Because there's no true indication as far as I'm aware that it will do so. So yeah, just play it safe, I suppose. But yeah, Hammer Brothers are really interesting. They're sort of like mini Bowsers, because, you know, Bowser jumps and shoots projectiles, and, well, spoilers, but we haven't quite gotten there yet, but Bowser will throw hammers later on, so they actually are like miniature Bowsers, which I think is pretty intriguing. Having, you know, like little miniature versions of the main boss that can be defeated in various means. That's just like an intriguing concept that they implemented. It's also just neat to have a really big, like, oh no, you're screwed kind of enemy, where you really had to, you know, test your wits and utilize the mechanics of the game to their fullest to actually beat in a totally safe manner. Or, you know, you can just like run through them and take hits and use invincibility frames, but you know, whatever, that's up to you. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. I'm just trying to play video games, whatever. Anyway, yeah. This level is practically identical to a previous level we played. That was a weird thing. Yeah, sometimes the jumping, like your jump hitbox is kind of weird. Don't get me wrong, it's usually in your favor, but like it just feels strange at times. But yeah, this is almost identical to a level we played prior. The only difference being that there are bullet bills flying at you constantly, so that's great. Still not a difficult course by any means, just, you know, be careful, man. You gotta duck sometimes. Sometimes you gotta jump. Sometimes you gotta duck. Sometimes you gotta do a little bit of both. This castle, yeah. So, even though I got through it pretty easily, I think, which is funny considering I was talking about, A, I'm not very good at this game, and B, recording and talking simultaneously, or playing and talking simultaneously is difficult. World 5 may be my least favorite world in the entire game. I generally have a very tough time with it. I choked super hard there. I was trying to take back that jump because I didn't wait for the Poto Boo and instead just went for it. I should have just gone though because I didn't think I'd be able to make it. I shouldn't have even hit that. But whatever. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. We'll just keep moving onward. But yeah, no, I don't like World 5. World 5 for me is generally the hardest world, and this castle certainly doesn't help that reputation. It's really just this part in particular, because there's 2 Poto Boos in a row, as well as these fireballs that Bowser's shooting from off screen like a total coward. What is this, melee? What are you Fox? What are these shoots? What are these Fox and Falco shoots? Sorry, not shoot. Sorry, that's Samus's shoot. It's Fox and Falco's laser beam. Yeah, that's a really weird fringe reference right there. What? What is this, Kirby Mass Attack? Jeez. I've never actually played Kirby Mass Attack. I've heard it's good, but I've never touched it. Now that we've completed the Castle of World 5, I'm gonna end the video here. We've been playing for quite some time. So, next time, we'll hopefully wrap up the game. I'm not super confident in saying that because I'll probably flub up World 8 a few times, but we'll give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. So tune in next time. We're gonna go after the real Bowser.